We've been discussing the mitzvah of Kiddush, the mitzvah of Zachor SHABBAT ZACHOR. So we're going to discuss a different mitzvah tonight. Also a mitzvah of Zachor, but the mitzvah of Zechiras Amalek, the mitzvah of remembering what Amalek did to us. And the mitzvah as well, we'll see there's a mitzvah as well to destroy Amalek, whether remembering and destroying is one mitzvah, two mitzvahs, that's a separate discussion. But there's a mitzvah of Zechira. So how does one fulfill this mitzvah of remembering Amalek? So let's just have a moment of silence, think about the evils of Amalek, and let's move on. That's not the way it works. So when the Torah tells us Zachor, so the Gemara tells us in Megillah, it says to remember Amalek, and in the end of the Parshas it says, Lo Tishkach, don't forget. So the Gemara says, if I'm going to remember, so of course I'm not going to forget, so it's redundant. So Lo Tishkach is not to forget, is in the heart, but Zachor ani makayim b'peh. How do I fulfill the mitzvah of Zachor? I have to verbalize it. And that's why it says, as well, we have the same discussion by Kiddush. But there is, I think, a prima gunnan shita that says you could be yotze with Kiddush belay because it says Zachor. But we assume, no, we assume like the drasha, like the Gemara makes by Megillah, by Zachor, by Zechiras Amalek, applies to Kiddush as well, Zachor v'Shamar, and Zachor means perpetual. So we assume it's not enough just to mentally think about it, but we have to actually verbalize it with our mouth, and that's the way we pass it. So it's not enough to just have a moment of silence. We have to actually move on. That's why it's interesting. People have a moment of silence to remember it. It doesn't seem the way to go. To remember things means you have to verbalize it. Because the more you're involved, the more the more you'll internalize and become part of you. So that is a mitzvah in our Torah to remember about the evils of Amalek. The question is, how does one fulfill this mitzvah? When is it? How often? So the Rambam writes, there's a mitzvah b'chol yom. The Rabbi writes there's a mitzvah every day of the year to remember Talmud, all the Maisim Haram, to remember everything that they did. So according to the Rambam, there's a mitzvah in our Torah. Today there's a mitzvah of remembering Amalek. Tomorrow there's a mitzvah. Next week there's no special day per se to do the mitzvah. Perhaps maybe midrabanan Chazal picked the Shabbos before Purim. But Minat Torah, according to the Rambam, the mitzvah could be fulfilled at any time of the year. In fact, it should be fulfilled every day of the year. And according to the Rambam, as long as I verbalize, say, I remember what Amalek did to me, that is enough. And the Rambam mentions nothing about a Sefer Torah. The Rambam mentions nothing about fulfilling this mitzvah through the means of Kriyas HaTorah. I don't need any text, I just say it. The mitzvah is Zachor b'peh every day of the year. That seems to be the Shitas HaRambam. You got it?
Yes.
So I assume that was a yes. So the Bali Tosfos in Megillah, in Brachas, they bring up, and in fact, the Magen Avram, based on obviously working with the Rambam, he says, when we say in Kriya Shema, I should say in the Birkas Kriya Shema, V'keiravtanu l'shimcha hagadol, and you should remember l'shimcha hagadol, we want to bring back the day where God's name is great. And the Torah tells us at the end of Bishalach, God's name is not complete until we destroy Amalek. So the Magen Avram writes, when you say in the Birkas Kriya Shema every morning, V'keiravtanu l'shimcha hagadol, you should have in mind to fulfill your mitzvah min haTorah of Zechiras Amalek. And of course, as we've mentioned many times, the discussion in the Gemara whether mitzvahs srichas kavana, whether mitzvahs require intent or not, different opinions and apparent steer in the Rambam, but the way we seem to paskin is based on the Magen Avraham and others. On a mitzvah min haTorah, we say mitzvah srichas kavana. On a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, we fulfill the mitzvah even without kavanah. So Zechiras Amalek is a mitzvah min haTorah. So therefore one has to have in mind when they say Ve'kerabtana l'shimcha gado, and they can fulfill the mitzvah every morning according to the Rambam. So that's the Shitas HaRambam. Tosfos is the first one to introduce the concept of Sefer Torah based on different psukim in the Megillah, and therefore Tosfos has a chiddush, not a chiddush to us, we assume it's axiomatic, but Tosfos says the mitzvah has to be done with the Sefer Torah based on different drushes. Tosfos concludes that to fulfill a mitzvah of Parshas Zachor, it has to be done you have to read it, even though it's a Zachor b'peh, but that's not enough b'peh. It has to be mitoch haksav. It has to be read from a Sefer Torah. That is the shita of the Bali Tosfos. And there's a third shita, the one that we're machmer for today, and that is the shitas harash. And that is, it's not enough zechiras b'peh. It's not enough just with the Sefer Torah. You need all of the above plus a minyan. It has to be done b'tzibor. To fulfill your mitzvah of Parshas Zachor, it has to be done kriyas HaTorah in a minyan. So where does the Rush say it, or I should say, where does the Rush doesn't say it? Where do we learn this out? This is the Shitas Harash. So it's a famous Shitas Harash, and it'll be interesting to see what the Rush actually says. It's just an implication, and from this implication, the minig is to be machmer like the Rush. So what is this Rush? Where does he get this from? So a very interesting Gemara in Brachas. I think Daf Mem Zayim, Daf Mem Ches in that area. And I think it was Rabbi Eliezer, if I recall. He came to shore one morning, or one afternoon, one evening, and he didn't have a minyan. He only had 9. But he had his Eved Kenani with him. So he said, you know what, I'll free my Eved Kenani. And when you free an Eved Kenani has the status, has a quasi-status of a Jew. He has to keep the mitzvah, some mitzvahs like Nashim. But when you free the Eved Kenani, you go through the process, he becomes a full-fledged Jew. So Rabbi Eliezer freed his slave to enable him and everyone else to be able to daven b'tzibor. So the Gemara asks, what's going on here? What do you mean? How did he do it? There's a prohibition, there's an Isser Aseh. La'olam bahem ta'avodu, that an Eved Kenani has to be a slave forever until Yovel, or whatever it means is you can't free a slave. So how can he go ahead? Mitzvah haba ba'avera. It's a mitzvah haba ba'avera. How can he do it? How can he go ahead and free a slave? It's like the Gemara tells us on Sukkot is a mitzvah of daled minim, and the Gemara tells us in Lulav Hagazu, you steal the daled minim, not only don't you fulfill the mitzvah, but you violated Gezela. So what are you freeing a slave for? It's a mitzvah ba'avera. Don't do the mitzvah and don't do the avera. So the Gemara answers, no. Mitzvah derabim, Shani. You're right. When do we say mitzvah ba'avera? That's not an individual mitzvah. Mitzvah's hayachid. But a mitzvah derabim, apparently the Gemara says here, there's another Gemara in Gid, maybe for another time, has a different answer. But the way the Gemara tells us here, mitzvah derabim shani. Apparently, a mitzvah derabim is so great that we even able to overlook a mitzvah above avera. So that's the Gemara. So the question is, what's this mitzvah derabim here? So, Pashtas, it's tefillah b'tzibor, maybe saying Kaddish, you know what? It's the Gemara talks about a mitzvah derabim, so, but it seems to be, you know, the mitzvah of tefillah or something like that, davening b'tzibor. So the question is like this. So there's a interesting machlokes rishonim that so what happens? Let's say, where else do we find the concept of mitzvah derabim? So it's a Gemara in Moed Katan. The Gemara in Moed Katan, I believe, Daf Yudalid Amud Beis. The Gemara tells us that there is no Avelis on Yantif. That when Avelis coincides with Yantif, Yantif wins. The Gemara says, why? Why is there no Avelis on Yantif? Why doesn't Avelis supersede Simchas Yantif? So the Gemara answers, because the mitzvah derabim of Simchas Yantif, the public mitzvah, all of Klal Yisrael is commanded in the mitzvah of Simchas Yantif, and Avelis, mourning, is a private affair. It's a Avelis diyakid. So the public mitzvah of Simcha overrides the private mitzvah of Avelis. And it's a machlokas Rambam and Tosfos how to learn that Gemara. In other words, and it's Lishita, so it's consistent with their view elsewhere. The Rambam writes, the mitzvah of Simchas Yantif, even Mizman Hazeh, is a mitzvah in our Torah. It's a machlokas with the Baalei Tosas. The Baalei Tosas say it's only a mitzvah drabanan today because we don't have the Beis HaMikdash, we don't have the karbanos to bring. So it's a machlokas, the Rambam Baalei Tosas, whether the Bisman, everyone agrees Bisman Beis HaMikdash Kayam, it was a mitzvah in our Torah. The question is, Bisman Hazeh, does Simcha retain its biblical status? Rambam, yes. Tosfos, no. That's one machlokas. And there's another machlokas by Avelis. The Rambam Shita is Avelis Yom Rishon D'Oraisa. The first day of Avelis is biblical, and that's what different other the Svardi poskim, right? And Tosfos and the Ramah say no. All Avelis is only D'Rabbanan. Even Avelis Yom Rishon is only D'Rabbanan. So you have a double machlokas here, Rambam and the Baalei Tosas, and we'll just plug it into the Gemara. So according to the Rambam, how do we learn the Gemara? The public biblical mitzvah of Simcha overrides the private biblical mitzvah of Avelis. And that's why Simchas Yanta beats out Avelis. And according to Tosfos, the public rabbinical mitzvah of Simcha overrides the private rabbinical mitzvah of Avelis. So it's just they both fit in. It's how you plug them into the Gemara. However, the question the Rishonim asked, Tosfos over there in Brachas asks, what about the following question? Let's say you have a mitzvah derabim derabanan, a public rabbinical mitzvah versus a private biblical mitzvah. Then what gives? We know if it's all things being equal, public beats private. Mitzvah derabim shani, the greatest of a mitzvah derabim. But what about mitzvah derabim versus a deraisa? Then what happens? If you have a public rabbinical mitzvah versus a private biblical mitzvah, what wins? So Tosfos raises that question. Where does it come up? It comes up everyone agrees Yom Tov Sheni is D'Rabbanan. The Yom Tov is D'Oraisa, but everyone agrees the second day of Yom Tov, the last day of Yom Tov, is only D'Rabbanan. The Gemara in Beya, whether it's a Takara D'Rabbanan, a Minna, that's a separate share, but it's a D'Rabbanan. So the Gemara says, so Tosfos says, what about the following case? Let's say someone dies over Yom Tov, so we said there's no Avelos on Yom Tov. But you do the Kfura on Chol Hamoed. That's what we do. Real Meikar Din HaGemara, you can do the Kfura on Yom Tov Rishon Al Yidei Goyim, and even Yom Tov Sheni, you saw that that's a minhag among some Hasidim and the Yekis today. They still do it. But our minhag, we go with Ramosha. It'll probably cause Mochil Yom Tov that way, so we don't do Kfura on Yom Tov Sheni. We wait till Chol Hamoed. So you do the Chol Hamoed, but Avelos doesn't begin until after Yom Tov. So when is that? When is Avelos Yom Rishon? So Avelos Yom Rishon. So the Rambam writes, so the some Rishonim write, and we know we said Avelos Yom Rishon is D'Oraisa. So when do you begin Avelos? Yom Tov Sheni is only D'Rabbanan. So here we have a case where we have a private biblical mitzvah of Avelos versus a public rabbinical mitzvah of Yom Tov Sheni. So that's a machlokas harishonim. When do you begin the Avelos? Do we say a public, according to us it's not a shaila because us meaning B'nai Ashkenaz, it's only D'Rabbanan for us anyway, but according to the Sfardim, so that's a discussion among the Rishonim whether what gives. Do you do Avelos on Yom Tov Achron or you wait until afterwards? I think our minhag is, interesting is, we don't do Avelos until after Yom Tov Sheni, but we count Yom Tov Sheni as day one. And that's probably part of the general principle of halacha kedivrei hamekel ba'avelos. Besides the general rules of Safek D'Rabbanan, Safek is a general rule by Avelos, halacha kedivrei hamekel ba'avelos. That's why I think Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, the Rav's father, the case isn't so important, but let's say it's a discussion. If the burial is going to happen out of town, you're not going, when should you start, etc., or there was the Gadol Habayis. So basically, Rav Moshe discusses how sometimes you could, you'll be makel that you only count you only actually have to do the 6 days of Avelos, because you're reading in terms of when to count. So either way, that's the machlokas Rishonim. So what about? So the Rush points out over here. So what does the Gemara over here seem to say? Because Olam Behem Ta'avodu, that's Din D'Oraisa, right? Not freeing a slave, and the mitzvah d'Rabbanan seems to be a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. So the Gemara seems to be a proof here that a public rabbinical mitzvah of, let's call it Tefillah B'Tzibor, overrides a private biblical mitzvah of not to free a slave. Again, based on the Gemara and Gim, maybe we could come to a different conclusion. So comes along the Rush and writes, I know what you're thinking, it's no raya. Maybe you know what it was when he came to free a slave? You got it. It was Parshas Zachor. It was Parshas Zachor. Parshas Zachor is D'Oraisa. So therefore you're telling me it's a public biblical mitzvah of hearing Parshas Zachor versus a private mitzvah of freeing a slave. That's why it wins. So the Rush says, don't tell me that. Don't tell me that we're talking about Parshas Zachor. That's a separate shaila. Are we talking about Shabbos? Because if we are, then the question is, can you free a slave on Shabbos? Again, so that's a machlokas Rishonim, whether you could be, we don't do a kinyan on Shabbos, but what about to be mafkir, to relinquish rights? So that's a separate, we'll get into it about on Pesach, Erev Pesach, that issue, but it's a machlokas rishonim whether you could be mafkir on Shabbos. So, so if you work with those shitas that you can, so therefore, maybe you'll be able to free a slave. But either way, even if it's not Shabbos, but the Rat says, and don't tell me we're talking about Parshas Zachor, and that's why, and it's a public biblical versus a. So what does everyone say? Like what's the Rush saying here? And don't tell me it's Parshas Zachor. Elovaden, the Rush is assuming that Parshas Zachor needs a tzibur. Parshas Zachor means a minion. It's not all of a parenthetical comment. Don't tell me we're talking about Parshas Zachor, and if he says don't tell me, then other people will say tell me. I'm telling you it is. Once he's introducing not, that means it must mean that other people are saying yes. At least that's what I'm saying anyway. So therefore, one could argue it is Parshas Zachor, and therefore you wouldn't bring a raya to this issue of a public D'Rabbanan because maybe it's a public biblical. But the point being is, from this rush, we see that that it's not enough. So the Rambam sheet is Zechiras B'peh. You just have to say, I'm remembering what Amalek did to me, did to us, and that's how you fulfill your mitzvah in our Torah. The Tosas introduces, it's not enough B'peh, you need a Sefer Torah. And the Rush takes it to the next step. It's not enough B'peh, it's not enough with the Sefer Torah, it has to be done b'tzibur. That seems to be the meaning. Many people are makbid today that we all try to go ahead and hear Parshas Zachor with the minyan, and we should. There's no reason to be machmir, especially on Parshas Zachor, which is a mitzvah in our Torah. That's why many people can be machmir also. Parshas Zachor could be a chulvat yachid as well, but we're machmir that we try to get a minyan for Parshas Zachor. And then some people are trying to make special minyanim maybe for the women, and then they get into a question, what's considered a tzibur? Do you have to have 10 men, 10 women? That's a separate discussion. But what we see from the rush is, and that's what the poskim machmir are based on this rush, that we need a minyan for Parshas Zachor. And it's an interesting question of the Trumas Hadeshen. The Trumas Hadeshen, I believe, raises the following question. What happens if you, let's say, I don't know if he says you're in jail, but you're somewhere, you only can get off one day. You can't only, you have a choice. Like there was a case in the Chuvas Radbaz that was asked, this guy was in jail, and the warden was going to give him a release, parole for one day. And the question was, should I just go out tomorrow? Because who knows with these people, they can change their mind tomorrow and they won't let me free. Or do I wait, it's Rosh Hashanah is coming up, do I wait for Rosh Hashanah and hear the shofar? So here you have a choice. Let's assume you can either go to the shul on Shabbos before Purim, Parshas Zachor, or you could go and hear the Megillah on whatever day of the week it is. This year it's Thursday, by the way. So what should you do? Should you get your day off from jail on Shabbos Parshas Zachor, or should you hear Kriyas HaMegillah? So Pashtus, what would one say? Pashtus, you would say, well, Parshas Zachor is a mitzvah min ha-Torah. Megillah is only midivrei Kabbalah. At best, either midrabanan or midivrei Kabbalah. Either way, it's not the Oraisa. So therefore, Pashas, one would say, you go ahead and you you go to shul on Parshas Zachor. However, perhaps we don't have to choose. maybe we could fulfill both in one shot. What do you mean? How can we do both? So the Magen Avraham raises the following question: can Purim morning, not the Megillah, but before the Megillah, we read from the Torah, Parshas B'Shalach, and we read about Vayavo Amalek. So the question is, can one fulfill the mitzvah of Zechiras Amalek by hearing Parshas B'Shalach? You know, usually we read from Parshas Kisei. So Magen Avraham writes, yes, one can fulfill the mitzvah of Parshas Zachor when they listen to Parshas B'Shalach Purim morning. And the Mishnah Brura disagrees. B'chayai Roshi, there's no way you cannot fulfill your mitzvah of Zechiras Amalek through Parshas B'Shalach. Why not? Because the focus in Kisei is Timcha Zechor. It's not enough of a focus on the mitzvah of Mechiyah. It does mention it, but it's doesn't mention it strong enough. So the Mishnah Brura does not like it. So it's a machlokas, the Magen Avraham versus the Mishnah Brura, whether one can fulfill the mitzvah of Parshas Zachor with the reading per month. If you assume like the Magen Avraham, so then you have no problem. It's obvious. You choose Purim morning, and you knock off, you get to hear the Megillah as well. It could be the Trumas Hadesha, maybe he's working with the Mishnah Brura, or the one who's asking the question is assuming you can't. What is the Nekudas HaMachlokas between the Magen Avraham and the Mishnah Brura, whether one can fulfill the mitzvah of Parshas Zachor with Yavo Amalek? So this could be, perhaps it's based on the Ramban in Parshas Kisei, the Meshach Chochmah discusses it. There's a mitzvah of Zechiras Amalek, and there's a mitzvah of Mechiyas Amalek. Are they independent mitzvahs? Are they connected to one another? In other words, is Zechiras, is it mitah Mechiyah, or is it an independent mitzvah? Is the mitzvah of Zechira connected? Should I remember in order so I should destroy them, or no? It's an independent mitzvah of Zechira. So the Magen Avraham seems to learn it's an independent mitzvah, and therefore one can fulfill the mitzvah of Zechiras Amalek even though there's not clear mention of the mitzvah of Mechiyas Amalek. And the Mishnah Brura is clearly learning no, Zechira is mitam Mechiyah, that the remembering is connected with the destroying. And since if I'm not going to say Timcha, so therefore Mishalach there's only Zachor, not enough of a Timcha, hence I'm not Yotzei. So that would be a Machlokas Magen Avraham Mishnah Brura. So usually the question comes up, not always, it's usually more of an issue for women to get to shul for Shabbos Parshas Zachor. Hopefully the men will be able to get there, but many times a woman, especially with young kids, and many of them, even one sometimes, they just have to be home with the kids, someone could be sick, whatever the case may be, and it's not uncommon that a woman does not make it to shul on Parshas Zachor. Again, it's a separate discussion on women chayiv in Parshas Zachor. I didn't even get to that, but let's assume they are, for argument's sake. Maybe we'll discuss that question at a later date. Maybe women are even chayiv, let's assume they are, and they can't make it to shul Shabbos morning. So what do? Some places try to make a Parshas Zachor minyan. I guess they have 10 men also who haven't heard it and they read it later. However, as we said, so what's the problem? So if she can't get a babysitter twice, get a babysitter once to save her for Purim. Because according to the Magen Avraham, you can knock off the mitzvah of Zechiras Amalek, and as well you can knock off Mikra Megillah. But we said that's the machlokas, the Magen Avraham and the Mishnah Brura. So perhaps the Mefarshim point out is that maybe even the Mishnah Brura would agree that when it comes to Nashim, when it comes to women, they can be Yotzei the mitzvah of Zachiras Amalek with Parshas B'Shal. Why? Why would that be a different? Because Mamanashach, if Zachiras Amalek is an independent mitzvah, so it should be a mitzvah saseh shazman grama, and women should be exempt. If you're telling me that Zachiras Bitam Mechia, so we know women are la bar mechamas ninu. Women usually are obligated in the mitzvah of war. So manashach, if Zachiras Bitam Mechia, they're exempt anyway. So therefore, the fact that there's no mention of war, and let's say, and assuming that the chayiv in the mitzvah of Zechira, so therefore they could be yotzi at Parshas B'Shal would be enough to fulfill Zechira if you assume it's nothing to do with Mechir. That's what the poskim others point out, that even if you want to tell me there's a machlokas Magen Avram Mishnah by men, but perhaps Kulei Alma agree by women that they could be yotze that mitzvah Parshas Zachor. So let's summarize. We have a mitzvah in our Torah of Zachor to remember about what Amalek did. Zachor Mos Tishchach. Obviously, if I'm not going to forget, I'm going to remember. So what do I need? Both. It must be that Mos Tishchach is Shichus Belev, Mani Makayim Zachor, Zachor B'Peh. And that's what we assume also by Kiddush. As well, you need Zachor B'Peh. There's a Pri Megadim that says believes enough, we don't pass it that way by Kiddush. And obviously that is one fulfilled this mitzvah. So the Rambam writes every day of the year, mitzvah saseh l'zachor, to remember every day about the evils, and he says, you remember it b'peh, and that's it. You're just talking about it, it's enough. Tosfos introduces, no, you got to read it from a Sefer Torah. And the Rush brings in not only a Sefer Torah, but you have to do a betzibor. It's from a parenthetical comment of the Rush that don't tell me we're talking about Parshas Zachor in terms of the Gemara and Brachas about freeing the slave. Then we discussed the Trumas Hadesh and Shaila. Is it better to come to Shul Parshas Zachor or hear the Megillah? It's a Parshas to go to Shul on Shabbos Parshas Zachor. That's the Raisa. However, perhaps with the Magen Avraham, maybe we can fulfill both. Machlokas Magen Avraham Mishnah by men, if it's true. Can a man be Yotze Parshas Zachor through B'Shav? That's only because a man is Chayiv and Mechiyah as well. However, according to, but for a woman, perhaps even the Mishnah would agree that a woman can fulfill her mitzvah of Parshas Zachor with Vayavo Amalek. It's a very important thing to know, because many times women have to hear Megillah anyway, even though a lot of times they get a later Kriya later, but instead of working out, they could hear, if they can't get off both times. I assume the idea would be is to hear Parshas Zachor from Parshas Kiseitze. But a situation where they can't make it, so therefore it seems to be, number one, you have the Magen Avraham even does it by men, so certainly a woman can rely on the Magen Avraham, and perhaps even the Mishnah Berurah would agree when it comes to a woman that they could be Yotze. So we'll have to continue on this issue another time.